Well, I think specifically with respect to the situation in the region, it's been very troubling. His decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Syria, leaving the Kurdish militias and others that fought with us against ISIS potentially at risk. The possibility that he will seek to withdraw all American forces from Iraq and his announced intention to withdraw from Afghanistan, I think risks leaving the entire region very much insecure. I'm not sure Biden actually would be much better, frankly. So it's going to require, I think, a lot of work by Kurdistan and by people in the U.S. who are worried about the risks for the Kurdish people to make sure that an adequate American presence is kept in the region and that our ties with Kurdistan remain strong. Right. Well, it's a very difficult election to call. You know, we've got a lot of public opinion polls. They show that Vice President Biden is ahead at the national level and in the key battleground states, but polls in 2016 showed that Hillary Clinton was likely to win, and she did not. And so I think everybody is still thinking about the 2016 experience, and it's very difficult at this point to call who will win. Well, I think it reflects these two decisions by Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates reflect the geopolitical shifts within the region caused in large part by Iran's activities, not just the nuclear weapons program, but the support for terrorism and conventional military activity. And I think that these Gulf Arab states saw that their interests were aligned with Israel. So I think that this is something that Kurdistan could also take advantage of because pushing back against the forces of radicalism, whether they come from Iran or ISIS, is really something that I think should concern us all. Right. Well, as you may know, President Erdogan spoke many, many times with President Trump about Halkbank. And at the same time, the U.S. Justice Department was investigating the bank and many of its senior officials for violating U.S. Sanctions against Iran, and then for committing fraud, really, in the statement about its finances in disclosures to the U.S. government required under U.S. law. Now, if an American bank had done that, had violated our Iran sanctions and then lied about it, I have no doubt they would be faced with very severe penalties. So, you know, it's just common sense. You're not going to treat a foreign bank better than American banks would be treated for the same offense. But that's essentially what Erdogan was asking for. And because of Trump's propensity to try and do favors for foreign leaders, because he thinks they'll do favors for him in response, Erdogan thought that he could make real progress. Now, Halkbank has been indicted. The case is underway. And if Biden wins, I'm sure it will be prosecuted further. Well, I'm very worried that it would be consistent with President Trump's approach in the region that he doesn't want to have involvement. And so thinking through what the continued threats in the region are from Iran, from a renewed ISIS capability, perhaps other terrorists, other interventions from Turkey, from Russia. It's a very complex region. I don't need to explain that to your listeners. And the withdrawal of not just of American forces, but American political attention, I think would be very damaging. But that's the risk that I think we face in a second Trump term. Well, many people in the administration tried to explain to the president that Kurdish forces had carried the brunt of the battle in Syria in particular against the ISIS territorial caliphate, and that they were highly regarded by our military, had worked well with them, and could look forward to continued U.S. support. So these kinds of comments that came to the president from people outside the administration, I really don't know where, were always very troubling. And I don't think reflect reality and don't reflect where a majority of members of the U.S. Congress are. So I'm not sure exactly what Joe Biden's position will be. I think he will have to come up to speed if he's elected during the transition, because obviously things in the region have changed considerably since he was vice president. But my hope would be that friends of the Kurds in Congress, in the Democratic Party, as well as the Republican Party, can make it clear to a new President Biden, if he wins, that we need to continue the support that we've extended and continue to have a strong American presence, which helps stability for everybody who fights the radicals. Well, look, this is, I think, part of the mistaken strategy adopted under the Obama administration. And the objective of destroying the ISIS territorial caliphate was very widely shared in the United States. ISIS was a significant threat, and there was general agreement that it had to be eliminated. But what the Obama administration didn't understand was that the Shia militia, armed and equipped and trained by Iran in Iraq, had a very different objective. And that is sadly what happened using some of the equipment that was supplied by the U.S. So it really, there has to be a more systematic examination of what is a just and equitable outcome in the region. And I have said for some time that I think that stability in the region can best be achieved by recognizing an independent Kurdistan. Now, there are some complex elements that go along with that, but if the United States policy were clear in that regard, I think it would force other countries to come to terms with it. And right now, we've got an ambiguous policy. I'm afraid that will be the same under a Biden presidency, and I think it's just going to lead to further trouble. Yes, I think if Trump wins a second term, it's highly likely he would pull all Americans out of Iraq and Syria. He's tried before. He's been dissuaded by his advisors, but I think he would come back to it. I think he'll pull all the Americans out of Afghanistan, and I just think it's he thinks this is something that most Americans want. I think he's just dead wrong on that. And I think he doesn't appreciate that it will not bring stability to the region. The presence of Americans and frankly, other coalition forces is not problems. The region dangerous. It will be the absence of those forces that contributes to greater instability and greater danger. Well, Trump will not be good. That I think we can see clearly. Biden, I think, is more uncertain. And look, what it says for friends of the Kurds in the United States is they're going to have to work harder on Biden and his advisors to explain what the circumstances are and why continued U.S. support for the Kurds is important.